Hello and welcome to Mobile Youth TV. My name's Graham Brown. Today we're talking about one of the hottest growth markets in mobile and youth, South Africa. And we're not just going to talk about South Africa, we're going to talk about young people and involving young people in the conversation. How do we do that? To do that, I'm privileged to be joined by our special guest, Ian Calvert, who is the founding partner of Instant Grass down there in Cape Town. Ian, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Graham.
Excellent. One thing I like about what you guys do is that you spend a lot of time actually getting out of the office and talking to young people. And a lot of what we say to our clients is that this is exactly what they have to do. The kind of stuff you get from that, you can never get sort of sitting around a focus group eating pizza in the office.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm really curious to understand a bit about, A, why you do that, B, the kind of insights you get from that, and C, think about the mobile companies. They tend to be very traditional. It's sort of above the line advertising, they get their agency to do campaign dips. They don't really go big on customer insights. What kind of things could they learn from this?
We've realized, firstly, we operate in a country where I think at last estimate, nearly 70% of the country is under the age of 25. You've got a massive youth population, which isn't just relevant to your traditional youth brands, but even the big FMCG manufacturers, the big insurance companies, the banks, all the categories have also now realized that they better start developing a relationship with the younger segments. Most of us at Instant Grass have worked not in the pure research side, but more on the marketing, advertising, media side. And what we realized in those years when we were doing that is that so many decisions about what is in and what youth are thinking is made on very anecdotal stories about what the marketing director's 15-year-old son thinks is cool. And at the same time, we'd all sat through on the other side of a one-way mirror watching people in focus groups act completely unnaturally. And particularly for young kids, if you give them enough pizza and crisps and beer, they'll tell you either whatever you want to hear, or they'll jerk you around and mislead you just for the hell of it. People will only share their inner thoughts and feelings from people they trust. So what we do on an ongoing basis is recruit networks of the right connected, articulate consumers who we call grasses, grass being a snitch, who come from all the different walks of life. Again, in South Africa, where you've got so much complexity of races and languages and regions, that we've got a network of young guys and girls who plug us into all the different subcultures, who we develop a relationship with, so that when we ask them a question about something, they tell us the truth and they tell us what they're really thinking. And so if you can have a conversation with those people in a natural and occasionally very honestly brutal way, then you're going to get really interesting insights, because people will open up to somebody that they trust. Yes, you need quantitative research to measure things, but at the start of the process, to enable you to do stuff, you need insights. So hence why we take that approach to getting insights that really make a difference to the client's business.
Brilliant. Okay, let's sort of deal with the main issue here. Is that I'm sold on what you guys do and how you do it. And I think it's a model which companies really need to become more aware of, because the problem is that they're being sold to by their own agencies about how they should be doing these insights, right? And I think that's not necessarily conducive to actually getting anywhere in terms of some real honest insights, which maybe is not what they want to hear. You put any brand manager or marketing manager in those kind of situations where they can either see the videos that you produce or they're actually there in person, and they hear a group of young people talking. It's young people who already have some kind of social dynamic between them. They can walk away from that confident because they know in their gut that's what we need to be doing. And I sometimes feel that when you don't have that confidence, then you go back to relying on data. You have to say, 65% of people under the age of 25 think this. But if you were to actually see it in reality, you would have the confidence to be able to go and act this stuff out without actually having to go back and keep relying on the analysis. There's a kind of internal sale there with this process, is that you're trying to convince people that this is the right thing to do. Is that sort of an easy process in South Africa, or do you find that still there's a lot of conservatism, I guess, with some of the larger organisations about how to do this kind of insight?
Large corporates will always need to measure things. They'll need traditional quantitative things to measure whether it's market shares or brand attitudes, etc., because they need to be able to benchmark things. But I think increasingly and reassuringly for us, what maybe 5 or 6 years ago you were dealing with the research department, they're now being called the consumer insight department. The more enlightened research managers or consumer insight managers now realize that a good insight can come from one person, and it doesn't have to be statistically significant. Over the years, in terms of how we deliver those insights, we've become very media neutral, if you like, whether it's bringing our grasses into a collaborative brainstorm with a client or shooting them on video, or even, just on a PowerPoint slide with a picture of a grass in a street in the right kind of environment with a quote taken verbatim from their feedback to us. And particularly the more senior marketers who don't really see anything of the real world suddenly see this young person and see these words either written or straight out of their mouths. It has a power to it. The secret is knowing the difference between an observation and an insight. At any given time, we're interacting on a daily basis with 120 young people. I don't think we've ever had a project or a situation where it has contradicted what has come out of the quantitative research, but it's become more enlightening. And there's that old adage in the sort of marketing industry that often marketers use research like a drunk uses a lamppost for support rather than illumination.
Yeah, very true. Okay, excellent. Well, let's talk about some of the insights now. That you've obviously had a wealth of experience. You deal with a lot of young people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And you really have that first-hand experience, which, as you say, for some marketers who may live in a bit of a bubble, just by nature of working in a large organisation. There's stories of young people you've talked to directly that have given some really piercing insights, which particularly stand out for you. That would be really powerful for recall of this conversation.
Yeah, one of the most rewarding projects that we've worked on in recent years was for Levi Strauss, where they were struggling to understand why young black girls in South Africa weren't buying their jeans. Their traditional 501 market was doing okay, but they just didn't have any traction amongst young black females. It didn't take a research agency to know, just physiologically, Southern African black girls, and this isn't a racist comment at all, it's just a physiological thing. They are shaped differently. They have very narrow waists and very broad hips. So the observation, girls are shaped differently, anybody could have. But the insight that we came up with through a conversation with our black girl grasses is that they're really happy to be shaped that way. And that they don't want to subscribe to these skinny European bodies that are kind of forced on them in fashion magazines, and that for them, their curves and their voluptuousness was a key part of who they are. It was a simple thing that Levi's jeans were not made to flatter that shape. They were made to try and hide it rather than enhance it. As a young black girl, if you could find a pair of Levi's that fitted you around your thighs and your bum, then you had this gaping waistband at the back. As part of the process, we gave some of our young black girls a video camera for the weekend and said, right, take us through your wardrobe. Because one of the dynamics, and it's probably a universal dynamic, is when a bunch of young girls are going out on a Saturday night, they'll often meet at a friend's house beforehand and bring a whole bunch of clothes with them, and then they'll all try on each other's clothes and work out what outfits they're going to wear, and then out they head for the night. So we gave the girls video cameras to film this dynamic. And what came out was that the girls' favorite jeans, even though some of them had the branded jeans, they had the Guess jeans and the Soviet jeans, and some of their favorite ones that they wanted to wear on a Saturday night were the cheap, elasticated stretch denim jeans. These girls love their stretch denim because what it does is it enhances that hourglass shape. It makes their buns look bigger and curvaceous. It makes their hips look fuller, yet it pulls in and tightens at the waist. As an insight, the fact that black girls were proud of that shape, and what came out was such rich video footage of these girls talking about their bodies and how proud they were of them. The business issue for Levi's was nothing to do with the brand. When they briefed us, they thought, do people not like the Levi's brand? Do they prefer other brands? It's purely that their jeans didn't fit. So what we then did in terms of co-creation was we got a bunch of girls to almost design their perfect jean and tell Levi's what they wanted. And to their credit, Levi's in South Africa managed to persuade the head office in San Francisco to put a percentage of stretch material into the denim weave without it having that horrible sort of spandex look. And then, so what Levi's then did was develop about 5 or 6 prototypes, which we then gave to our girls to test drive over a weekend. And then we narrowed it down to one particular one, which seemed to work. This is nearly four or 5 years ago. So very much in the early days of co-creation or consumer collaboration. They said, okay, well, whilst we could think of a name for this jean, why don't we get your girls to think of a name? So we said to the girls, okay, here's a pair of jeans that you've just designed for the African booty. What would you call it? After a process that we took them through, they came up with the name Eva. Instead of Eve being the original woman, because the original woman came from Africa, she should be called Eva. So Levi's took that and launched the Eva jean. It shot the lights out. I mean, it's been the top-selling jean in South Africa for the last few years. They actually launched it in Los Angeles a few years ago. And it all came from a simple insight. The insight wasn't that black girls are shaped differently, but the insight was that they're really happy that they're shaped differently.
Brilliant.
So that's a nice little kind of co-creation story.
That's such a good story. I really like that story because it's sort of end-to-end as well, which is fantastic. I would wonder, in that situation, let's say they took the traditional route, which would be to run a focus group. You're dealing with sometimes sensitive issues. You know, you're talking about body image for women, especially young women. They may not be so honest and open. And then
Exactly.
You could put them in a focus group. I imagine people sitting around a table, eating pizza and saying, have a look at these images. Can you rate these brands? They'd feel the peer pressure not to come out with the kind of issues that you talked. They're sitting there with a bunch of people they don't know who they are in this focus group. There may be people of different colours. So I think, what you did was put them in their environment where they were comfortable. It's a great story. About that model as well is that you've kind of closed the loop in consumer insights, marketing and product development, where they're the same process. I wonder as well, the people that you got involved in the insights and the feedback on product development, did they then become integral in telling their friends about this product, actually amplifying it to their network?
That's always been one of the debates in our business. I mean, we do have the 3 key pillars of our business. The first is the insight and consumer research. Then there's the product development, the co-creation side, and then there's word of mouth. And we've always debated, can you have grasses who also what we call seeders, people who you would feed stories to. And we've done a lot of profiling and fancy algorithms and all this kind of stuff, but there is a fundamental difference in the psychology of those people. Having said that, if you involve somebody in the development of a product that they then feel ownership of, then they are obviously going to be a natural advocate for it. In answer to your question, certainly in terms of where we've involved people in the product development, they automatically have become passionate advocates for that product. Often though, again, without getting too scientific, the people who make good grasses, so good observers of life and people and street culture, are often the people who are not right center of attention, but, standing in the circle slightly outside the center of attention and observing. Whereas the people who make the most charismatic advocates of brands and products are often the people who are dancing in the middle of the circle, and they might not know exactly all the dynamics, but they have, by force of personality and connection, become influential in their own right, but they might not necessarily be able to articulate in that same way. So many clients ask you to find those mythical opinion leaders. And there is no one set of opinion leaders. You get opinion leaders who are relevant in a particular product category. If you're a young girl, the girlfriend you turn to for advice on cosmetics is not the same girl who's going to tell you what bank you should be with or what phone to use. So a key part of our job, we use our grass network to try and connect us with people who are involved and passionate about a particular category. And I think particularly in mobile marketing, that's essential. You don't want the complete geeks who know how to use every single piece of functionality on their phone, but you want the people who, when they talk about it to their peers, are believed to be credible.
There's so many insights that you've shared with us today. I'm really big fan of what you do because you're really out there living what we talk about to our clients on a daily basis. We're talking about the theory, and here's a company that's actually going out and doing it and making it successful.
Thank you for watching Mobile Youth TV. We hope you enjoyed insights on South African youth market and co-creation with Ian Calvert. Do come back next time for more insights from youth markets around the world.